Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Kronk.
Well, good day, ladies and gentlemen of Gig Nation. It is James Kronk, and I am back with another Golf Industry Guru podcast. And I am thrilled to have as a guest today, well, first of all, this fellow, besides being an award winner from the PGA of America, besides having his own radio show on ESPN, besides having more contacts in the golf industry than anyone that I know, it seems like when I look at the people that he's been talking to, he has or had a job title that I think is just brilliant in, as you know, what I call the golf entertainment business as the director of fun. So welcome to our podcast today, Mr. Keith Stewart. And Keith, thank you so much for joining our Gig Nation podcast.
James, it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. And Gig Nation, hey, how you all doing?
Well, first of all, let me start. I mean, people obviously don't get to see us, how good-looking men we are, because we're both dressed up and look fantastic. But I love that shirt. Does that say, I create golfers?
Yes, it does. And that's what I do, James. I create golfers.
I love that. That's fantastic. So let's just, first of all, tell me about that shirt, Keith. Let's start off with that. I create golfers is on your chest. And tell me about that.
All right. Well, if Gig Nation's not aware of it, there's a program out there called Operation 36, and it started in North Carolina at Campbell University from a couple of PGM students. And this is a long time ago. It's been over a decade that it started, but I believe at this point there are over 500-600 clubs, and it's a player development program. And I'm sure this is a lot of what we're going to get into today. So it's kind of a cool starting point. And I wear this shirt all the time because I feel like it reminds me of what you and I do at the end of the day. Yes, we're in the service industry. Yes, we are attached to golf. But at the end of the day, we are here to create golfers, not just people trying it, not just people playing, not just top golfers, but the whole kit and caboodle. You know, we are trying to create people that love the game as much as you and I do. And they don't have to dedicate their lives to it like you and I have. But for the most part, we love folks that embrace it and they get involved. Well, these two guys, Ryan Daly and Matt Reagan from North Carolina, created a player development program called Operation 36. And this is a T-shirt they gave me at one point because their slogan was, if you are an Operation 36 coach, you create golfers, not just giving lessons. And they hate to use the term grow the game. They want to create golfers. And it's a total paradigm shift in thinking in what their program delivers. And that is, as a player development program, they go straight to the golf course. And they do instruction, but they get you on the golf course within your first 2 sessions, let's say. And what they do is that they allow people, and the reason it's called Operation 36 is that they want to get people playing 9 holes with a par of 4, which 9 times 4 is 36. And they want people to keep score and to learn how to hole out and actually play golf. So hence, I create golfers, right? Here's the catch, though. You start at 25 yards from the hole. Okay?
Right.
So like my kids went through it when they were 6 and 7 years old. They're much older now, in their early teens. But when they would go out and play and you'd put up a scoreboard and everything that, a 7-year-old can from 25 yards off the green can chip and putt their ball and shoot and can break 40 rather than taking that 7-year-old and putting them on the forward tees and having them make an 11 on every hole. And then it's just, it's just such a paradigm shift in thinking. And I love what these guys do. And, generally when I get involved in a conversation like I know we're going to get into today, I put a shirt like this on because it gets me fired up to spend some time with Gig Nation.
Awesome. I love it. And now first of all, I saw reading a little bit of background for you, obviously. I guess I don't know how lacrosse connects with golf, but when did you start falling in love with the game of golf? Were you a young player, junior at 10 years old, or did you come to it later in life?
So no, yeah, early on. I lived about a half a mile walk from a local country club where I grew up as a bag rat, scrubbing hooks, picking the range, and caddying. So by 14 years old, I'm playing as much golf as I can. We were on what we used to call the Monday tour. So whoever didn't have a Monday outing, we would bounce around to those local country clubs and sneak on and play their golf course because we knew the other caddies or employees there. So we would have fun like that. So I've been in and around the games for, that's well over 30 years now. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been good to me. And at the time, I'm 14 years old. I'm heading into high school. And I was also a lacrosse player. And this is pre-Tiger Woods, so if you do the math there on the 30 years, golf wasn't nearly as hyped up as it is nowadays, and I played both sports. Lacrosse helped me get into college. I got recruited to play for a Division I team. I went to Holy Cross College up in Worcester, Massachusetts, up there in New England, and it was a great opportunity for me to go to a great school and play and compete. And we'll get into this more today, but probably one of the reasons why I don't always come across as a golfer or like in the true sense is that I competed at the highest level I could, Division I collegiate, at a team sport. And we all know golf's an individual sport. So I bring a lot of team concepts, leadership, mentorship, coaching, principles into my work, which is an industry which tends to be a little bit more stay in your lane. And I think that is part of the reason why I've had tremendous success is that I'm not afraid to work, share, and collaborate. And you probably know this because, you're in charge of a whole nation of people, is that collaborating in the golf industry, in the golf vertical isn't, at times it's almost been, like a 4-letter word. It's like taboo, but more and more things are growing. And the reason you and I got together is because I collaborated with somebody else and you saw it and that sparked an interest. And, so I love that all of that is kind of changing and it's going forward. And so I guess we'll see what we get into today. But lacrosse ended after college, and I played competitive golf all throughout my teens. And then, going forward past that, both sports have been very good to me. I have no complaints.
Let me ask about kind of junior golf and your kind of, as you said, kind of growing up as a bag rat and same thing. I mean, I was lucky enough. My parents got me into golf when I was really young, and then I left it for many years and got back into it kind of at the end of high school a little bit and found my way. But do you think that like if you're talking with kids today, a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old, do you think that we have to have a different way to connect with young people to get them excited about golf than was the case when we found it or over the decades? Do you think that there's something different? There's some magic potion now to kind of get kids away from their technology and their iPhones or computers to get out and play, play 36 or create a score or get on the golf course? What do you think about attracting golf to kids today, if it's different in any way?
Oh, I think that anything is different in 2021, James. I mean, I think that the way that we gather someone's attention, whether they're our age or they're the age of my two children, which are 11 and 13, we all have these devices which garner our attention. Some will say too much, some will say not enough. Some people have a nice healthy balance on that. The kids certainly don't. And, coming out of this pandemic pause, there's no doubt, where we used to sit in a situation and, it was like, all right, get kids off screens, get kids off screens, get kids off screens. And then we just spent 18 months putting kids on screens. Yeah. And everything was acceptable. So I think at the end of the day, the best answer to your question is that if we use the two words, pay attention, if we pay attention to what people are doing and we listen to them, whether they be children or it would be beginner golfers that are 30 years old, or it would be a retirement community's golf league, right? How they communicate is just so important to breaking through and then connecting with those people and then becoming relevant to their lives. So if you choose to do things the way that James Kronk was raised, and how you communicated with your teachers and your parents and your mentors throughout your formative years, none of that will work. All right. We have to be aware of those things. And this has a lot to do with why I'm in the role that I am today.
Right.
Because it wasn't like a big fish, small pond thing or anything like that. My number one talent as a PGA professional was being a communicator. That was something that I felt like I could do better than most. Right? Steal a golf line there, better than most, right? And I ran into some people that were very strong mentors to me that instilled and empowered me to keep pushing myself to be a better communicator and a better communicator, which made me a better leader, made me a better husband, makes me a better dad. All of these factors are involved. I mean, communication is vital to the success in anything in life. I mean, that's like a pillar of the world, right? So, but not everyone says, hey, I tend to be pretty good at this. I'm going to work on it more. And I've talked with other people. They say, work on your weaknesses. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Well, my strength was communicating. My weakness may have been in something else. So rather than go work on something I'm obviously not good at, James, I decided I was going to go work on something I was good at. Well, you know what? There's all sorts of levels of insecurity that we face in our lives, right? And if you're smart and you're able to be self-aware, we all need a little validation here or there. So if you go down the road of strength and then you get that validation coming back because you're expressing a talent that people are obviously embracing and it resonates with them and you can connect with those people, well, it pushes you a little bit further and it helps you become, let's say, 1% better every day. And I'm sure we'll talk about the golf industry or the service industry and how it all comes together and post-COVID, pre-COVID, or whatever, all of these different factors, the great reset of life we've just had. But it's really cool. And I decided that this strength of mine was something that I needed to keep pushing. And that's what led me to doing videos at my club and communicating with people in all different forms of medium. And then I got on the radio, and then from the radio, it's been more content. And then I write, and then all of these different things. And I said, wow, geez, people say, well, how'd you go down that road? And I said, well, I kept working on my strengths. Everyone's always, golf, they go to the Golf Channel and they'll say, Brooks Koepka's playing better right now. He was a little weak with the putter in his last major championship, so he's been working on his weakness with the putter. If Brooks Koepka is working on golf, he's not working on a weakness.
Right.
Okay? He's a top 5 player in the world. There's nothing he does that's weak in golf. Right? Comparatively speaking, yes. If Brooks Koepka was working on, being a more empathetic person, yes, I would say he's working on being, on one of his weaknesses, right? Or at least what he portrays. I don't want to, judge him or whatever. But, the point being is that if he's working on golf, he's working on his strength. So I encourage people that I talk to, like yourself, and that speak to a nation like Gig Nation, James, is that get out there and work a little bit on yourself, but work on the things that are going to inspire you to do more work because life's hard. And if you want to go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so let me ask you about that because I think one of the things that we talk to and we, I'll stand in front of a group of, up and coming PGA members or food and beverage managers, whatever it might be. And we sometimes talk about, picking a lane, right? And finding your strength and, like I was a terrible instructor. I mean, I did my best. I did what I had to do as a PGA member, but, I should send checks to the people that I gave golf lessons to because they needed to repeat or redo whatever I told them. But, finding your lane. So when you kind of found that communication lane for you as a PGA member, can you share with me a little bit more about, what your thoughts are about our industry and picking a lane and your strengths and as a manager, as a PGA member, as an up and coming, one day I want to become a golf club manager. I always say, like, if you want to run the private country club of your country, then go work at a private country club. If you want to run a Troon resort in Cuba, go work in the resort side of things and become a specialist, become knowledgeable in that area. So is that kind of how picking that lane for you with communication led to all these directors of fun and the radio and all that stuff as you're talking about? And how do you think that fits with what would you advise, or what do you advise to kind of, up and coming kind of club professionals like you have been?
This is a fascinating question. And the reason I say that is that We all look at things as a moment in time. And the people that listen to this from Gig Nation, and as you listen back to this and you critique your own style of interviewing and you go through all of this, and this content lives on forever on the interwebs of life, right? People will say, wow, geez, that guy Keith, he really has it all together, as if it just happened, right? This is, and I hate to use the word process, but you have to here because I'm not a human thesaurus, right? It was a process for me to get here. When I was coming out of college and I decided I wanted to play golf as much as I could, and then that didn't work out. So, okay, I'm going to teach golf as much as I can. And then I want to grow and become a leader in golf. Those things took like over a decade to go through those decision-making processes. And when I talk to young leaders in the industry, right, I say that so much of life takes time, and we don't want to be patient. I mean, if you need an answer to something, you go right to your phone, boom, Google gives me the answer. How old is, a person? You type their name in. How old is James Cronk? Dun, 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 boom, number pops out. Okay, so we get totally kind of like our brain is constantly ramped up that things need to happen quicker than they possibly can. Mm-hmm. And I am known for any number of sayings to the people that I work with and that I have managed or that I have mentored or that I have apprenticed underneath these mentors. They say, Keith, how do you come up with all this stuff? I said, I don't know. I said, golf mirrors life. I'm just kind of doing my thing, and one of them is that when it comes to the game of life, right? We all want to play chess, not checkers, James. Okay. This is not about running across the board and king me. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I could go wherever I want on the board. All right. It's not that simple. Mm-hmm. Right. And if it was that simple, it really wouldn't be that much fun. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, you and I know that because of the stage in life that we're in. When you're 25, you don't want to hear it. But if you're 25 or you're 30 or you're picking up the service industry as a second career, listen to me very carefully when I say when you play chess, what I mean is that, every piece on the board has a purpose. They play a role. And when you think about this in your world, James, this is really going to resonate with you all of a sudden, right? Because when it was explained to me, I was like totally entranced with this description of how this game, which requires a lot of thought, a lot of planning, and you start out as a pawn. When you're a pawn, you can jump 2 spaces with your first move, right? If you're not familiar with chess, you can. Every other time, a pawn can move 1 space forward, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Pawns are expendable. They go away. How many pawns have you encountered in your life? Plenty. Mm-hmm. Plenty that always took those first 2 steps, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes you get past pawn, and then you can become a knight. Ooh, a knight's pretty cool, right? So you can become a knight in life, and that means you could jump over people. You could jump over a pawn, but you're still kind of limited in what you could do, James. You could go move 1, turn 2, go ahead 2, move 1 to the right. You could do those types of things. And the knight gets a little more responsibility. Now, this could be like a first assistant golf professional. Right. So the pawn's like an assistant pro or an outside operations manager, or let's say that person is like a head server inside. OK, and I don't know the culinary evolution as well as maybe I should, but I'll stick to the club manager side and to the golf side. Right. So now the knight, we've described that. Well, geez, you've done a really good job as a knight. Now you can be a bishop. So the bishop can only go diagonal. They can go as far as they want, but they really can't go straight ahead. Why? Because this is like your beverage manager, or this is like a head pro under a director of golf, right? You're like, Swanson, I want to go over there, but you can't, right? You always have to get across the board. You have to go a little left, a little right, a little left, a little right. Why? Because you're only a bishop. The game doesn't ride upon you, James. Right. Okay. So then you continue to evolve your career and you're playing this chess game of life. And then you get to go 1 step further. And now maybe you become a director of golf or a head golf professional on your own, or you become an assistant club manager at a very nice club. And now you're like a rook. Well, geez, I can go in either direction as far as I want, but I got to stay in my lane. stay in my lane. I do my job really, really well. Maybe I'll advance to becoming a queen, and the queen can move all over the board as far as she wants. And it seems like the pinnacle. And you say to yourself, well, geez, think about all the different places I can go, like in a Dr. Seuss sense. Oh, the places we'll go, right? So I travel all over the board, but I still am not the reason that we play chess.
Right.
Right. So the queen is somebody who's very successful, and I don't know if I'm stuck somewhere between rook and queen, but someone that was very successful in their role where I was as a head golf professional. I was very fortunate to work for some great people and then be a colleague of some more great people. I won some awards and gained some notoriety, and that was fantastic. But the ultimate goal is obviously to win the game. You need to be the king. Well, not only does being the king require the presence of being a king, right? People will say, well, if being a king is so great, why does he or she only have to be able to move one space at a time? Well, because they only need to move one space at a time, right? The board revolves around them,
Sure.
So, hopefully everyone enjoys this analogy, but the point being is when it comes to a career and you're determining the different skill sets that are going to let you evolve through a industry like the service marketplace that you and I find ourselves in, that we connected through, I think it's good that you have a plan, and I think that you understand where your station is and you maximize that station. It comes from being more self-aware. It definitely comes from sharing and collaborating with other people. And I love the fact that in our industry that we're doing way more of that in the last 3 to 4 to 5 years, even pre-COVID. And more people are starting to see the light that, maybe something like a Topgolf can add to my day at a private club. Maybe I can learn something from a resort that I travel to. They're a resort and I'm a private club, we're all servicing a clientele. We're trying to make the consumer as happy as possible. So, when it comes down to it, I was able to, I feel like, have a decent amount of success along the way because people helped me understand it's not bad being a knight. Just be the best darn knight you could be. And before you know it, they'll make you a bishop. But if you're running around just trying to be a bishop and get the flowing robes and everything, right, you're going to find that it's not going to work. So patience is good. Self-awareness is good. And don't just run across the board and get kinged. You're going to find at the end of the day that kind of instant gratuitous success isn't going to really add up to much. Whereas if you spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years going through a couple phases of your career, I think you'll benefit greatly in the long run.
What I was thinking about a couple things. First of all, I love that analogy, that story. I'm going to steal it. Half the time I will give you credit, but I love that whole analogy. It's a fantastic example. And it made me think a couple things. Number one is that I know some people that I've come across that don't want to be more than a pawn or more than a bishop or more than whatever it might be. And some, I love the fact of someone wants to be a knight, but they got to understand how they got to get there and all those things. But when you talk about collaboration, I think one of the things that's always fascinating about our business is that, you talked about earlier on, it's a bit of a solitary game, right? And so a lot of people get in this business, especially from a PGA side. Let's just talk about PGA members, as you and I have experience as PGA members. They get in they're a golfer. They love standing on the driving range, hitting 7 irons for 3 hours up by themselves. And then, they say, this would be a good job. This would be a good career. I want to, work in the golf shop. But not a lot of people, I think, say, I want to get in the golf business because I love people or because, I love to, I want to manage people or HR or marketing or the business side of it. I think that's one of the things that is so fascinating because if you're passionate about the business of golf, you really have to add that to your passion for the game of golf. And I think one of the things that's challenged our industry is that we don't often look at it as a business and all those different roles and those things that are needed to collaborate together. We don't often run a country club or run a resort or from a golf standpoint or a retail store the way that a business would sometimes have those mechanisms. And so when you kind of, in your experience in running clubs and in being a manager and a marketer and innovator, what did you find was the challenge in implementing that creativity in that environment? Or did you find it a challenge in implementing creativity in the club environment? Because I can tell you in my 30 years, this is one of the things that I talk with clients all the time. It's like, look, you say you want to be a family club, but kids can only play on Tuesdays before 8 a.m. So, you're kidding yourselves. So how do we move this whole concept and get you to buy into what you want to be? So making change in our industry is not easy to do. And so how have you overcome that? What skills do you think, and that's probably you're going to tell me about your communication and your talent and talking to people and things like that. But what advice would you give others on how to be innovative in this somewhat stifling industry?
Okay. So there's 4 things that you brought up there.
Probably.
Best of my recollection.
By the way, is that bad interviewing technique as a radio expert, as a DJ? Is that bad interviewing technique to bring up 4 questions and then leave it there?
No. You have one question. There's one overall theme of what you were trying to say there. There's just 4 parts that are going on there.
I love it. Give it to me.
You talk about change. You talk about creativity. You talk about innovation. And you talk about having a business sense. They're all intertwined, but they do all kind of have their own specific conversation points. Mm-hmm. And so I think, I have learned so much by observing and listening to the people that I have served over the years. So I spent 25 years working at a club post-college as an ambassador for the game, but not only also an ambassador for the institution or the facility that I was working for. And, all of them were private clubs. All but one were founded before, 1925.
Yeah.
So these are long-standing traditional places. And something like change would be looked upon very negatively. So when you start to ask questions about change, you have to incorporate some of these because change and innovation are going to kind of go hand in hand. But I'm going to steal the other 2 terms that you brought up that I just said, which is having a business sense and being creative. So you got to begin with a business sense. You have to have an idea of, do you remember going through business school level 1? All right. When you become a PGA member. And one of the things that it always stuck out in my mind, and we're going through this class, and I said, man, this is going to be really helpful because I went to college. I was a science major. So I was a double major in biology and pre-med. And outside of the fact that I'm sure my parents were really proud at cocktail parties that I turned out to be a golf pro. But, I have touched the lives of probably more people than I could have ever imagined in a doctor's office. That being said, I didn't take any business classes. So I really looked forward to business class 1 and business school 1. And we took it and they gave you such pearls of wisdom, like you need to establish hours of operation. And I'm thinking to myself, well, of course you do, right? But sometimes the most obvious things are the most powerful things. And that's why they're obvious, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to build a business sense. And one of the other things that they teach you is that you need a mission statement, because that will help direct you. Because otherwise you just become this amorphous being that goes in like 100 different directions, like an amoeba, right? And in reality, you want to be a little bit more like an archer with an arrow. You want to be sent along on this mission. And then the decisions that you make will be predicated by, these decisions that you have made with which, like, how am I going to run my business, right? So those things are really important when it comes to, if you want to implement change or be innovative, you have to have some form of a business sense of what it is you're trying to do. And then you got to start getting creative. Okay. So you start getting creative and you find ways to consensus build in and amongst your constituents and your consumers, the day-to-day people. And you create these walking billboards. I call them the WBs, right? What's a walking billboard? Well, from now on, there will be people in Gig Nation that will be WBs for Keith Stewart's message. They will walk around and they will speak of this particular interview and they will regurgitate something that I had said, and they're going to pass it along, and they'll probably give me a hat tip along the way, whether they do or they don't. Them passing it along makes them a walking billboard for me. Yeah. I mean, I think it's great when we drive down the highway that there's a billboard there, but only so many cars see it. I would rather have a walking one that moves around and can touch the lives of more people when it's networking in a professional sense, but also in a social sense. So we build consensus, and maybe we have to go to a board, right, James? So now we're building consensus in and around this, and we start to get people to buy in, because no one's going to go for change if they don't think it's already their own idea. So you got to plant that seed with their friends, with their fellow board members, with their colleagues, and in and around what you're trying to do, you follow that mission. You stay true to it so you don't seem like you're lost or any decision is arbitrary. You can always draw it back to the direction of that arrow. And then you get creative by building a support group. And then you take it to, let's say it's the club president or the owner of the club or the board. And then you bring it into that committee room and then you say, hey, let's have a discussion about this. And then as you plant that seed, you let the discussion develop. And then when somebody brings up exactly what you're thinking, then you jump on them and you say, I think we should do that. I totally agree with James, right? Now, you've empowered them to come up with this idea. Who cares if it's your idea or not? Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins, James. If you're just going to, if you're going to get to the goal, who cares who gets credit for it, right? You think Tom Brady cares about credit? I mean, he gets it now to the nth degree. But do you think when he won his first 3 Super Bowls, he cares about the credit? No. He got in there as the engine, as the lifeblood of that team, and he pushed everybody on and set an example. Same thing with Michael Jordan. You know, we saw it in The Last Dance when we saw that documentary. You have to be the same way. You have to elevate everyone around you. You have to empower them, and you have to get them to want to think creatively, and then you can bring about change. And then if you bring about enough change, then you truly can become innovative. But your question is genius in a way, because you cover the 4 topics that I just brought you through that make a difference, right? Starts with a business sense. You have to be creative, right? You build a little consensus, that starts change. And if you can, if you can exact a little change, then your facility will become a little more innovative and you'll become leaders in our space.
Yeah, that's so good, Keith. And I have, let me ask you, of the peers and the people that, I've had some, as most people that I know that have found any kind of success in really in anything, what they do is they open themselves up to peers. They open themselves up to learning, and they, like you said, you listen and you watch, and that's some of the greatest skills ever, listening and watching. When you think of the peers in the industry for you, the people that that motivated you the most, what would you say is kind of the thing that really has helped you along the way? And when you mentor other young people or you try to engage other people, what's one of the things that is your life lesson for being successful in this industry? Because this industry, some people think the golf industry is a business. Some people think it's a sport. Some people think it's a silly hobby. Some people think we're in the entertainment business. I mean, they're all correct, actually. But for you, what's that one life lesson that you learned from your peers that you try to pass on as a peer, as a mentor?
Golf is a people game.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
End stop right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Golf was a social game before it was a competitive game. Golf was a social game before it was Top Golf, before it was a US Open, before it was anything else. All right. And, this encompasses a much larger conversation in a macro sense of the world, James. But if you were just talking specifically about golf, the people that I have learned from the most are the ones that appreciate others. You know, the greatest gift we can give our children is self-esteem. All right. That will lead to so much of their ability to succeed in life. Right. And those mentors and, you know, the PGA of America was built on a mentor apprentice relationship. Okay. And the greatest mentors understand that. And they know that it takes people and they can learn from their apprentices. So great mentors and great people and great leaders in all walks of life, in all industries, are great persons, I guess, for lack of better grammar. Okay. Do you ever talk to somebody who's really successful and they make you feel like you're the only person in the room?
100%.
I work on that skill. I work on that skill every day in some capacity. Now, I may meditate to calm my brain. I may work on my listening skills because not just as an interviewer, but just as a husband, as a father, as a neighbor, as all of these things, as a fellow player in your foursome, right? When people walk away from you and they think that you were just totally engrossed with them, then let me tell you something. That's how you build a significant, powerful network. So my one message has always been that I live by this acronym, and that is the letters YN, N as in Nancy, =YNW. Okay? YN equals YNW. And people that know me and listen to this, they know what's coming next.
But I can't wait.
That acronym stands for your network equals your net worth. Okay? Who you know is where you will go in life, which means you should embrace everyone. And, you know, it's a very hot topic right now with DE&I conversations that, you know, oh, we should introduce more people into the game and invite a woman out to play, or we should have more diversity in golf and everything, right? I pay attention to everybody. Every single person I come into contact to. I am not the person that walks down the hallway at work and sees somebody like James. I've seen him every day and say, hey, how you doing? And keep walking. I will always stop. And sometimes it gets awkward because the other person keeps walking. But then you might notice something on the wall, or you entertain yourself with a little laugh and be like, well, they didn't have enough time for me. That's fine, right? But there's so much in life we can gain from getting to know others. And I can't even tell you where I am today is every bit about living by that mantra. And I was so fortunate I was taught that by my parents at an early age, but I couldn't really encapsulate it into one thought. So back when I was about, in my late 20s, I was watching TV, and of all things, I was watching MTV, right? Back when MTV was a thing.
Sure.
And there was this show on called Run's House, and it was named for one of the famous lead singers from the rap band Run DMC. Now, was I a huge Run DMC fan? No, but it was about Run's life as a father, and he was now a reverend and everything, and he was living, and it was reality TV, and I got sucked into it, right? Well, Russell Simmons, who's an extremely successful businessman, entrepreneur, was a friend of his. I believe they're related, cousins, or in some way, shape, or form, right? They're having a conversation in Russell's office, and Russell brings up that acronym. So I'm giving him a hat tip in a sense, right? But I've lived by that to this day because it just kind of encapsulated all the things that I was brought up on by my parents, Keith and Christine Stewart, right? Your network equals your net worth. If you don't pay attention to people in life, and if you're not secure in your own, and you don't embrace people and bring them into your world, right, you'll never get as far as you could go. That doesn't mean you can't get far. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, even the people we spoke about earlier, the Tom Bradys, or take somebody like a Bob Iger, who I think is a tremendous person, right? The gentleman that had run ABC and Disney and done all of those things and now has had a 40-year career with one company. It's amazing, right? And he got to that level of leadership, okay? If you read his book, he just talks about how it's basically one connection of a story with a person. Oh, I spent this couple of years working with James on this project, and then boom, 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 and it goes up this ladder of career success. But you know, the rungs are the people with which that he spent the time on going through each level, and it's just an amazing, and it really draws you in. You know, it's so important to try to have a positive effect on others because they will then in turn they will they will literally try their hardest to have a positive effect on you. You know, a good example of this is, you know, so many times I've helped assistants try to move up in their career. And I said, you need to build a reference list. I mean, this is a really good practical application to what I mean here. Okay. You've worked at 5 different clubs. 4 of them, young man or woman, are all the top 100. They have these fantastic memberships. These are the pillars of the world, right? Titans of industry. Okay. Give me an example of a reference. Oh, well, I taught Bob Iger's kids golf, right? Okay. Well, why don't you write an email to him and see if he'd be a reference for you? Oh, Bob Iger doesn't want to bother with me. Okay, time out. I guarantee you he would love to be a reference for you because you taught children, right?
Yes.
Now, I don't know that any of these situations are real with Bob Iger, but the point of the story is that anyone that gets asked to be a reference loves that opportunity. They embrace it. They in turn, they start asking you questions about you. You have been servicing them maybe for 3 or 4 years. They turn and they spin the microphone on you and they ask you questions about you, and that feels good. And the sharing of that opportunity takes your career to another level, or it takes that relationship to another level, and who knows where that will go. And that's just one little simple practical application. I remember when I was in the throes of that, and I still do this to this day. There are certain people I call once a year. And when they answer the phone, I can tell they're smiling ear to ear. Keith, I haven't heard from you since last October. You better believe, I mean, I'm pretty OCD and my sock drawer is lined up. So you better believe every October, James is getting a call because, you know what, I want to give him an update on what I'm up to.
Right.
And that person, they love that. And I can't, you know, everyone can hear it in my voice. I can't emphasize that enough. When it comes down to it, you ask me the one thing that has helped me more than anything else, other than common caring for what I do and the people that surround me. Your network equals your net worth. If you don't pay attention to people, you will soon be on an island, and you'll find yourself worse off than Tom Hanks in Castaway.
Yeah. What I love about that, and it reminds me of a conversation I have with my 2 boys, is that you also get to choose your network. Right. And so it's so important to surround yourself to go work. Like when I got in this golf business, there was 2 individuals I wanted to work for, and that was it, because they were it. I waited months to get a job in the back shop, because those were one of those 2 gentlemen were going to completely make or break my entire career, because I knew that at that age of 28 when I was becoming a golf pro. And so I waited because I wanted to learn from the best. I wanted to have that network, that pedigree. I knew the people I was going to work with were going to be the kind of people I wanted to work with and learn from, because that was the standard that these gentlemen ran in for their clubs, right? And so, I had this conversation with my kids, and I've had this conversation with when we look to hire and fire employees, right? I mean, I say, there's a reason why you have to improve the team. There's a reason why people get traded off of the New England Patriots, because they're not fitting in they're not helping the team win a championship. And so as you're building your network, you have to look at it sometimes as a business. You have to say, this individual is helping me be happy, help me enjoy my time better, help me do healthy things, help me, achieve the things I want to achieve. And this individual over here is hurting me. This person's holding me back. And we all have to make those choices. I think that's, I love that acronym. And I love the way that you kind of put that. It's really, really cool.
Gig Nation, if you're listening, what James just said is so important when it comes down to thinking about and being motivated in developing your own professional and personal network, right? You have got to diversify your portfolio. If you only talk to the people that people expect you to talk to, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Remember, the number one skill you can have is that when you have a conversation with somebody, that you make them feel like they're the only person in the room. Now, one of the things that I used to do, and I learned this from one of my mentors, was that when I brought in managerial staff. So that's an assistant pro, caddy master, director of outside operations, a director of instruction, whoever that may be, that I was going to employ. I gave them 2 books. And they were both written by the same gentleman. His name was Les Giblin. And one was Skill with People. And then the second one was The Art of Dealing with People. Now, these are like manuals. They're literally 30 pages long with big font. You know, it looks like one of my college papers. It's like, you said 12 pages. Yeah, but Keith, the font's like 37. Well, you know, it is what it is. But I would pass those books over to those people, and then I'd give them, you know, a couple weeks to read it. And I'd say, bring it back. Let's talk about it. And it wasn't a book report. How did this book make you think differently? Right. And I'm not saying that it has to be those books, although I encourage people to try them, because people are always fascinated by things like the Jedi mind trick in Star Wars, right? How does that work? Well, you could use that every day. I use the Jedi mind trick every day. I get away with stuff all the time. My wife says, how did you do that? I said, well, because I just looked at the situation thoughtfully, and then I went over and talked to somebody, and I empowered them to help me get what it is maybe I wanted at that point. Might have been access to a certain area or whatever it may be, customer service. Oh, my wife dropped her phone in the dog bowl and it's fried. Okay. She's like, how did you get another phone? Well, I didn't start on the call by insulting the person because I couldn't understand them or something like that. Right. I embraced that person. I connected with them. And then after I connected with them, lo and behold, something worked out in my favor. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I think it's really important, the message that you just gave everybody right there. Like with life, like with our financial security, you got to diversify your portfolio. And you'll find if you do that, again, the sky is the limit with what you can accomplish.
That's so true. And you accomplish things with the support of others. Keith, just so fantastic. And I really appreciate you taking the time today because there's so many, my goodness, I could go on for 5 hours. And as you've already realized, I'm a disorganized interviewer because I've asked 5 questions at one time. But I want to bring it back a full circle because we started kind of talking about creating golfers and getting people into the game, and then I took you down the path of talking about working in the business, right? And I love that message, and there's so many great messages there. But I want to take it back to creating golfers for a minute and finish off with my last little topic, if you don't mind, which is about, Gig Nation is filled with people that are learners. They're I always say it's the clubs that hire me to help them are always the clubs that are moving forward. They're you have 2 clients, the clubs that are successful and want to be more successful, or the clubs that are about to go bankrupt. It's like those 2. But, and so people that are like you and I have come across, the leaders, they're always learning. They're always open. They're always kind of listening to new ideas and to new things and trying to improve themselves and improve their club, improve their business. And I wanted to ask you, you talk about creating golfers, and I know with your pro show, your radio show on ESPN, with your role as director of fun, with all those types of things that you do, your passion for growing the game in your own very unique way. What do you tell a non-golfer? What do you say to someone that says, I don't play golf or my kids don't golf? And they say, I've thought about it, but I don't know. Why should I take up the game? Why should I get my kids to take up the game? Why should I played 15 years ago, but I thought it took too long and it's too boring and there's too many rules and I got to wear long socks, or do I have to wear long socks? So what's your elevator pitch to attract people to the game of golf?
May I ask you a quick question?
Please.
In 2021, James, what's your definition of a golfer?
Well, my definition of a golfer is anybody. I mean, I believe people can come and leave the game. I believe people can play it 6 days a week or play it 6 times a year. I believe that people can use the rules and not use the rules, and they can use a foot wedge is fine by me. I feel that right now the game is certainly going through a bit of a boom with the intermediate crowd. I think that at least in the experience that I've had from a discussing with the operator's business standpoint. But my definition of a golfer is anyone. It's an open door for me. I don't know if that answers your question, but for me, it's truly anyone.
Okay, so if we consider the depths of humanity and the 7.2 billion people that are on this planet, you mentioned, what do I tell a non-golfer? Aren't we all golfers?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So my point there in having you go through that is that so many people in our marketplace, in our industry, think that there are golfers and non-golfers. Everyone has the spirit of golf inside them, James. Okay. So if you start to treat people as if they are similar to you, then you will engage them and they will feel very welcome and they will come inside your universe. Brilliant. But if you always walk into a conversation where everyone's a golfer or a non-golfer, right? Who here likes to be stereotyped? Who here likes to be put in their own lane? Let me put myself in my own lane. Let me embarrass myself. I'm good at that. I mean, I only open up my mouth to change feet, at the end of the day, or at least that's what my wife would tell you, right? So at the end of the day, what I just took you through there is something that I wish, your producer would cut and then put it into a piece of content, and then you put it in a PowerPoint that you take to all of these clubs. You tell me who's a non-golfer. Because everyone's a golfer in my mind. Right. And as a result, when I have a conversation with them at a cocktail party or at a presentation or at a golf association, or they're a PGM student, or they're someone, I don't think anyone's on the periphery. And certainly not now after we had 10 million more golfers come into the game just on our continent, right? You have to start these conversations as if the person is actually part of your world. And you will find there is such tremendous amount of power and significance in drawing that person in if you do. So going forward, James, and Gig Nation, right? Don't ask someone if they play golf or not, right? Don't ask them if they're a golfer or not a golfer. Oh, did you go to Topgolf? Oh, well, okay, but that's not real golf, right? Oh, geez. All right, well, it's like being in a restaurant and my daughter likes things a certain way and the waitress says, she goes, well, I have picky eaters in my family too. Well, that really made my daughter feel good. It's going to make my wife come across the table, right? So we do that and we don't realize we're doing it, right? If there's one thing we've been taught through this great reset of COVID-19 is that it has given us time to be more thoughtful as human beings, right? So don't judge people for being golfers or not being golfers, right? At the end of the day, just talk to them about golf. Tell them why you love it, and it might just turn out that they might start loving it themselves.
That is fantastic. That's so good, Keith. That's so good. Tell me about the Pro Show. Tell me about your radio show that you bring on so many fascinating people on your show. I guess that answers your network is your net worth, because your network is exceptional. When I look at the quality of people that you obviously have attracted to share their story on your show. Tell me a little bit, tell our listeners about how they can hear the Pro Show and about how they can learn more about you and how they can connect with you and what you're doing.
Well, I really appreciate you asking that question and giving me an opportunity to talk a little bit about it, James, because at the end of the day, the audience is so important and it drives the message that you're trying to deliver, and certainly the one that I am. The Pro Show with Keith Stewart takes place every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the New York City market on ESPN Radio. It's 9:20 a.m. Now, so many people that listen to this are the Gig Nation are all over the country. But we live in a digital world, which is great. You can stream it if you just go to the radio station, 9:20 a.m., ESPN New Jersey. And you just Google that, and there's a listen live button there. So on Fridays at 3 p.m., wherever you sit in the world, 3 p.m. here in New York City is when we're on, and we talk to people, and we talk about the pop culture of golf. I am not concerned with talking about the flagstick being in or out. I might want to have a conversation about what it would be like to be Bryson's caddy, though. And we have a ton of fun with music and telling stories and current events. There's comedy infused with real discussions about what truly is the pulse and the lifeblood of this game.
Yeah.
And the easiest way I can explain it and try to engage your audience here in Gig Nation to get them to want to listen is that there is so much in golf is on two ends of the spectrum. On one side, just picture a very long spectrum, everyone, or like a big long yardstick. On one end, you have the PGA Tour, LPGA, Champions Tour, European Tour. You have professional golf, okay, the pinnacle of the game. And so much, 75% of the stories come from that. Great. On the other end, the polar opposite of that is basically your barstool world. And, guys crashing golf carts and funny videos and trick shots and all of those things, which are really important. They're cool and they're fun too. I live in the middle and I interact with both sides. See, I'm not an influencer, James. I'm an industry expert. I've got 25 years. I'm a 5-time award-winning PGA professional. You want to have a conversation on my show about swing mechanics? Great. You want to talk about marketing? We could do that too. We want to talk about, like you mentioned earlier, Will Ahmed from Whoop, right? Here's an entrepreneur. We get into these conversations. U.S. Open week, I talked to a friend of mine, David Abelese, who's the CEO and president of TaylorMade. And we didn't talk about TaylorMade. Of course, was it a plug for TaylorMade? I mean, I guess it could be because he talked about their mission and everything. But I said, but how are you so innovative? What makes you a great leader? So the types of questions that you are asking me today, we talk about that in a golf sense because I am a PGA professional. I've been a lifer in the game. We've established that already. And I have a great appreciation for all the game has given me. And I try to return that to my audience. And for an hour every week, we rock it out. We do all sorts of fun things. But I have these wonderful guests that come on. Last week, we talked to a gentleman by the name of Matt Cardis. Matt travels around in his van. He's a photographer by trade, and he owns a website called Golf in Your State. And he's out there not only doing philanthropic things by bringing golfers together and cleaning up beaches and stuff like that, but he's also traveling around and telling golf stories. Fantastic. This week, we're going to talk to Hale Irwin. Wow. The next week, who knows it'll be, right? Yeah. We had Annika on for Mother's Day. Why? Not because she's the GOAT of women's golf, but because she's a mother who plays with her kids now, and it was Mother's Day weekend. And I asked her questions about, what are you going to do on Mother's Day? She's not going to caddy for my son in an event. You think Annika's going to caddy, right? The greatest woman player of all time, and she's going to caddy. So, those are the types of fun things that we do constantly. And I just think it's so important. My nickname on the show is the director of fun. To me, golf, and I am very proud of being a PGA member and have been for a long time. And I write for PGA.com. If you want to look at my coaching content, you can go to PGA.com. There's an article there every other day written by Keith Stewart, PGA. And you can look at my coaching material. I talk on a golf platform called Stick and Hack Media. And you can look them up and Google them. Every Monday at noon, we do a reacts to the current event stories of the weekend. And I write feature articles for them. It might be about the Walker Cup or the appointment of Molly Marcoux-Samaan to be head of the LPGA. All of these different things. What you are starting to get a sense of is that I am a modern golfer. Okay? I have traditional ties to the game. And when I play, yeah, sure, I use the rules. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we can't go out and have fun. We can't play a little music. We can't play outside the box games. Doesn't mean we can't talk about gambling or something else fun. So, if you're into that sort of modern golfer mentality, I encourage you, just give me a shot. Listen to one of my shows. Go back. There's almost 4 years worth there, James. Just go there in the search engine and type in a name that you think is cool. I had Gary Player singing on my show one time. He's like literally singing the Paul Simon song. And I'm like, how did we get to here? But it happens all the time. So if you love a good interview and you love a little comic relief, that's what we're doing week in and week out on Friday afternoons. And then you just go type in the Pro Show with Keith Stewart on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, any of the search engines for podcasts. And every week the show is posted there. And you can digest it in any which way you want to.
I love it. Yeah. And when speaking of digesting, I think that what I took from today, Keith, and what I love about your stuff, and when I go back, because in doing some research and listening to the guests that you have on your show, and And something that I think, and we talked about it today, we talked about it with people, we talked about listening, we talked about so many elements, which is what you're so great at, which is being a communicator. And you communicate such a wonderful way about the joys of the game. And I that's one of the things that we all know when we're in this business. You know, I've never met someone in this business I didn't like. I mean, really, you know, I've been around the world, and when I could be in a pub talking to someone about something, and we can determine that we're both played golf one day, and we can talk for the next hour about great golf courses of Ireland, you know, for goodness sakes. I mean, the game is a universal opportunity to communicate with others. I loved your answer about that there is no non-golfers and golfers. I think as an industry, we have to embrace that kind of concept. And I think that this reset allows us to embrace a whole bunch of things. And I agree with you. I think the fact that you're on this podcast today is an example of how we as an industry have started to embrace sharing ideas and talking with each other and realizing that we're all in this together. And if, you know, if your club's doing better, my club's going to do better one day too. So, you know, it's a community, right? And I love how you communicate. And I really strongly invite our listeners to make sure they check out your show and lots of the interviews that are, like you said, on podcasts, because I love the way that you make golf. I love that example, like you said, about being in the middle, right? Because golf is about life. And for some people, it's how they pay the bills, how they play on the PGA Tour. For some people, it's making funny videos on TikTok. But golf is really touches so many different people in so many different ways. So I love the way that you communicate that story. And I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts today.
Well, thank you so much. James, you know, I'm sure everyone can feel and sense the passion that I have. Golf, like I said, golf was a social game. I've been around it my whole life, which means I've been around a lot of wonderful people, just like you, and just like so many members of Gig Nation. And today is just another really representative example of how fortunate I am to be included. So I can't thank you enough for this opportunity to share my message and hopefully gain a couple more listeners.
You bet. I love it, Keith. Thanks so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening to today's Gig podcast. We'll be back again with another exceptional individual of the golf industry. And my thanks again to Keith Stewart. And see you on the inside.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.